Good evening. It's Thursday, the 26th of June, and here's what's making news around the world on World News Tonight. Military warning. US threatens renewed strikes if Iran rebuilds nuclear facilities despite diplomatic tensions. Defense summit. China's defense minister holds strategic talks with Iran, India and Russia amidst regional security challenges. Community tradition. Small towns' long-standing scholarship fund empowers graduates and strengthens local education opportunities.
From Colombo, this is World News Tonight with Amarsha Fernando.
Good evening once again. During the discussions at the NATO summit, US President Trump warns of renewed strikes if Iran rebuilds its nuclear sites. Talks remain uncertain, with both nations cautiously claiming victory.
US President Donald Trump warned that if Iran rebuilds its nuclear facilities, he will launch another attack. At a press conference in The Hague during a meeting with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte on Wednesday local time, he added that the strikes on Iran had set back its nuclear program by decades, saying that the facilities had been completely obliterated.
There's one building, but that's a building that sunk substantially into the granite, so that, the fire goes right over it. I believe it was total obliteration.
Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian said Tehran seeks nuclear energy rights for peaceful purposes, not weapons. Iran held 5 rounds of talks with the US since April, but disagreements over uranium enrichment remained unresolved. But he said Iran was ready to restart talks with the US within an international framework. However, recent US strikes on key nuclear sites have weakened Iran's position, making a quick return to negotiations uncertain. Meanwhile, the war between Israel and Iran apparently ended on Wednesday after a 24-hour phased ceasefire announced by US President Trump, though both sides traded minor attacks during the truce. President Trump gave a strong warning to both Israel and Iran, accusing them of violating the ceasefire. Israel and Iran both claimed victory in the conflict.
Dear citizens of Israel, during the 12 days of the Operation Rising Lion, we achieved a historic victory, and this victory will stand for generations.
Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz said on social media that Israel will respect the ceasefire as long as the other side does. Iranian President Pezeshkian said Tehran would only hit Israel if it violates the ceasefire deal. Military Chief of Staff Eyal Zamir said that Israel's military was shifting its focus back to Gaza. On Wednesday local time, an Israeli army tank operating in Gaza exploded, killing 7 soldiers.
China's Defense Minister Dong Jun hosted the Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit in Qingdao, with top officials from Russia, India, Pakistan and Iran attending. The high-level gathering signals shifting alliances and renewed regional coordination amidst growing global security and geopolitical tensions.
The Shanghai Cooperation Organization Ministers meeting held in Qingdao, China yesterday brought together key military leaders from across Asia, including those of Russia, India, Pakistan and Iran. Chaired by China's Defense Minister Dong Jun, the summit focused on enhancing security coordination, counterterrorism efforts and regional stability in an increasingly polarized global landscape. Though the SCO does not operate as a military alliance like NATO, it serves as a strategic platform for dialogue and defense cooperation among its diverse members. With recent conflicts in the Middle East and South Asia fresh in memory, the forum took on added significance as officials sought to reaffirm commitments to mutual respect and non-aggression, even amid lingering tensions between several member states. One of the most closely watched participants was Iran's Defense Minister Aziz Nazirzadeh, making his first international appearance since the outbreak of hostilities with Israel. His attendance at the summit reflects Tehran's intent to reassert itself diplomatically despite heightened scrutiny over its nuclear ambitions and regional influence. His presence was symbolic, underlining Iran's push to strengthen ties with SCO member nations, particularly China and Russia, as it navigates increasing Western pressure. Discussions during the summit did not publicly delve into Iran's conflict with Israel, but the subtext of regional realignments and strategic messaging was evident. Observers noted that Iran's participation in the SCO reinforces its pivot toward Eastern partnerships at a time when it faces diplomatic isolation from much of the West. Established in 2001, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization has grown from a China-Russia-led security pact into a formidable geopolitical bloc that includes India, Pakistan, Iran, Belarus, and several Central Asian nations. While originally focused on combating extremism and fostering regional trust, the SCO has evolved to address broader strategic concerns, including military coordination and economic integration. Qingdao's summit served as a timely platform for member nations to signal their shared desire for regional autonomy and multipolar diplomacy. Despite internal rivalries such as the strained India-Pakistan relationship, the SCO continues to provide rare opportunities for engagement. The defense ministers of India and Pakistan met for the first time since their border conflict last month. For China, hosting the summit reaffirmed its role as a convening power amid growing East-West divides, offering a vision of security cooperation outside traditional Western frameworks.
Vietnam's National Assembly has unanimously abolished the death penalty for 8 crimes, including embezzlement, espionage and treason for offences committed before July 1st.
Vietnam's landmark amendment removes capital punishment for 8 offences: embezzlement, bribery, espionage, drug trafficking, producing fake medicine, vandalising state property, threatening peace, and plotting aggressive wars. Offenders convicted before July 1st but not yet executed will have sentences automatically commuted to life imprisonment. The change reflects a broader effort to modernize the legal system and address inconsistencies, as many of these crimes, especially economic offences, had rarely resulted in death sentences in practice. While retaining capital punishment for 10 heinous crimes such as murder, child rape and terrorism, Vietnam shifts towards life imprisonment without parole for the omitted ones. Debates in the National Assembly revealed cautious support. Lawmakers emphasized the need to prevent wrongful execution while ensuring severe penalties remain for grave crimes. This legal pivot aligns with international practices and seeks to balance justice, human rights, and social stability as Vietnam reaches to a deeper goal: integration.
North Korea has inaugurated the massive Wonsan Karma coastal resort, accommodating up to 20,000 visitors, state media reports. The ceremony, attended by Kim Jong-un, his daughter, and Russia's ambassador, opens domestically on July 1st as tourism slowly resumes post-2023.
North Korea has finished building the Wonsan Kalma coastal tourist area, according to state media Thursday. It's a massive resort town on its east coast, and a key project driven by leader Kim Jong-un for years to promote tourism. Footage on state TV showed Kim and his family attending the inaugural ceremony. The Wonsan zone can apparently accommodate around 20,000 visitors, according to reports. State media said it will be open for domestic guests from July 1st, though there was no mention of foreign tourists. Plans to rebuild the seaside city into a billion-dollar tourist hotspot were announced as early as 2014. Tourism is one of few cash sources for Pyongyang not targeted by United Nations sanctions. And since 2023, North Korea has been slowly lifting its pandemic-era restrictions, allowing Russian tourist groups into the country. Most parts of the country remain closed to regular tourists, though Pyongyang in April resumed hosting a marathon event for foreign runners for the first time in 6 years. North Korea has supplied ammunition, artillery, and thousands of troops for Russia's Ukraine war, and both Moscow and Pyongyang, both economically and politically isolated, have drawn closer together. This month, the two countries have restarted a direct passenger train service between their capitals for the first time since 2020 and have agreed to expand cooperation on tourism. State news agency KCNA said Russia's ambassador to North Korea and embassy staff were invited as special guests for the Wonsan ceremony.
Time for a short commercial break now. We'll be right back. And welcome back. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has signed an agreement with the Council of Europe to create a special tribunal targeting top Russian officials for the crime of aggression in the 2022 invasion, potentially including President Vladimir Putin himself.
Kyiv had been pushing for its creation since the start of the war, and the idea of a Ukraine War Tribunal has now become real. The Ukrainian president signed the agreement with the Secretary-General of the Council of Europe this Tuesday. But the work, Volodymyr Zelensky says, has only just started.
Today's agreement to create the tribunal is just the beginning. And now we must take real steps to make it work. And it will take strong political and legal cooperation to make sure every Russian war criminal faces justice, including Putin.
Ukraine accuses Russia of committing war crimes since the war broke out in 2022. It says that Moscow's forces have bombed civilian infrastructure, as well as killed, raped and tortured civilians. Claims that Russia denies. Current tribunals, including the International Criminal Court, which has issued an arrest warrant for Vladimir Putin, don't have the powers to prosecute Russian nationals for such offences. The Council of Europe, which oversees human rights matters on the continent, is confident that it would be able to hold those responsible to account.
Ukraine and the Council of Europe are signing an agreement to establish the special tribunal for the crime of aggression. A tribunal to judge between victims and aggressors, between impunity and accountability. Because without accountability, there can be no lasting peace for Ukraine and Europe as a whole.
But whether we will one day see Vladimir Putin in the courtroom is very uncertain. Russia doesn't extradite its own citizens, and leaders benefit from immunity from prosecution while in office.
German Chancellor Friedrich Merz pledged full support for the European Commission ahead of today's EU summit in Brussels, urging the backing of a US trade agreement before President Trump's July 9th deadline, even as member states debate a firmer or faster deal.
Chancellor Merz said that Germany fully supports the Commission's work to secure a deal with the United States ahead of its self-imposed July 9 deadline. He emphasized avoiding further escalation in the trade war, noting that harmful 10% across-the-border tariff on EU goods and steep levies on steel, aluminium and cars. With Germany export-heavy economy in mind, especially automotive and industrial sectors, Merz echoed other leaders calling for a clean and rapid solution. EU heads of state will decide whether to compromise swiftly with Washington or hold out for better terms that protect key industries. While most EU diplomats lean toward a quick agreement to dampen economic risks, they urge safeguards like retaliatory tariffs or digital taxes to rebalance any shortfall. Beyond trade, leaders are also discussing NATO defense goals, climate targets, AI rules, and the 18th sanctions package on Russia, underscoring the summit's layered agenda. With less than 2 weeks before Trump's ultimatum on July 9th, the Commission, led by Ursula von der Leyen, has reportedly made good calls and is fully committed to wrap up negotiations swiftly. US officials remain firm on the 10% baseline tariff and demand broader concessions. EU negotiators are weighing whether partial sector-specific cuts should avert stiffer duties. But many fear a hasty deal may disadvantage Europe, prompting talk of imposing its own tariffs worth nearly 100 billion euros if US demands prove excessive.
16 people have died during a nationwide anti-government protest in Kenya, with most fatalities blamed on police, Amnesty Kenya reports. The unrest fueled by anger over police brutality, corruption, and a blogger's custodial death and rising living costs marks a dangerous escalation.
More than a dozen people died during nationwide anti-government protests in Kenya on Wednesday, said the head of Amnesty Kenya. The group's executive director, Irungu Houghton, told that 16 people were, quote, verified dead as of 8:30. Houghton said most of those who died were killed by police. He said the figures were verified by the global rights watchdog and the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, or KNCHR. The government-funded KNCHR earlier said in a statement on X that 8 deaths had been reported across the country. The watchdog noted heavy police deployment and, quote, allegations of excessive use of force, including rubber bullets, live ammunition, and water cannons. KNCHR said on X that over 400 casualties had been reported, including demonstrators, police officers, and journalists. Kenya's police spokesperson declined to comment on the statements by Amnesty Kenya or KNCHR. The state-funded Independent Policing Oversight Authority said in a statement at least 61 people were arrested during the protests. The protests come a year after deadly demonstrations against a tax bill culminated in the storming of Parliament and killed more than 60 people. Although last year's protests faded after President William Ruto withdrew proposed tax hikes, Public anger has remained over the use of excessive force by security agencies, with fresh demonstrations this month over the death of a blogger in police custody.
Firefighters have contained wildfires near Atamanovka in Russia's Zabakalsky region, slashing the burnt area from 6,000 to 4,500 hectares with 250 personnel, 65 vehicles and aerial support. Officials report no danger of the residents or property.
For nearly a week, crews have battled fierce blazes near the village of Atamanova, located between Lake Baikal and the Mongolian border in Russia's far east. The fires initially scorched approximately 6,000 hectares, but have receded to 4,500 hectares over the past 2 days, according to the Russian Emergency Situations Ministry. Officials emphasize that no homes or local residents have been directly threatened during firefighting operations, which reflects the effectiveness of recent containment efforts. A comprehensive task force has been deployed to suppress the flames, 250 firefighters, 65 ground vehicles and multiple aircrafts. Footage shared by the Emergency Situations Ministry today reveals planes making precision water drops over the most intense fire zones. This robust, multi-pronged strategy combining air and ground assets has allowed authorities to strategic target hotspots while minimizing risk to personnel on the ground. Although Atamanovka lies outside immediate danger, the blaze is part of a larger, escalating wildfire crisis across Zabakalsky Krai and adjacent Siberian regions. Officials declared federal and regional states of emergency in April as dozens of wildfires exploded across hundreds of thousands of hectares. Experts point to unusually dry spring weather, strong winds, and human activity behind the early fierce fire season. As authorities monitor weather patterns closely, ongoing vigilance remains critical to prevent renewed flare-ups.
Swiss glaciers are developing deep holes resembling Swiss cheese as accelerated melt from climate change undermines internal ice structure. Experts say this alarming transformation signals rapid glacier decay, posing serious risk of water supplies, hydropower and downstream communities.
High in the Swiss Alps, majestic glaciers are taking on an unlikely appearance. The scientists say climate change seems to be eating away at them.
It's a Swiss cheese that is getting more holes everywhere, and these holes are collapsing and it's not good for the glacier.
The holes that resemble those in Swiss cheese are thought to be caused by air pockets in the ice, and as global warming accelerates, so does the thawing from inside. Experts fear this could add to the demise of the already receding rivers of ice. Measurements taken at Switzerland's Rhone Glacier show just how quickly they're melting.
When we drilled this stake in the last September, the ice surface was somewhere up here where my hand is, and now this is already melted.
Global warming is having other effects too. Experts believe it was at least part of the cause of last month's massive collapse at another Swiss glacier that wiped out an alpine village, causing nearly $400 million worth of damage. Back on the Rhone, this scientist says there's at least one way to save or at least slow down the shrinking of these glaciers.
Everybody can contribute on their own to reduce CO2 emissions as far as possible.
He says while it won't help immediately, it could in the long term, but the time to act is now.
Time for a short commercial break now. We'll be right back. And welcome back. In Guizhou, China, a young girl missing after school was found trapped in a drainage ditch following severe flooding. Rescue teams searched manholes for hours before locating her. However, miraculously, after over 7 hours, doctors confirmed that she was unharmed.
Tonight, harrowing video showing the incredible moment a young girl in China was rescued from a storm drain, where officials say she was trapped for 7 hours during intense flooding across the region. In this video, you can see the little girl clinging to a member of the rescue team, who's using a flashlight and rope to wade through the waters to guide them to safety. According to the fire department, the child went missing after school and was suspected to have fallen into a drainage ditch in China's Guizhou province. Water rescue crews were called in, one by one, checking manholes until they located the girl. Officials say when they found her, she was trapped inside the 20-foot deep pipeline and struggling to survive. Across China's southwest region, thousands of people have been evacuated from heavy rains triggering severe flooding. Torrents of water seen sweeping through streets, destroying bridges. Some cities and villages now completely underwater. Rescue crews seen here using drones to drop supplies to trapped survivors. Amid so much devastation, this rescue a brief moment of relief. The little girl carried to safety and miraculously unharmed.
In Swanville, Minnesota, a heartfelt tradition continues as residents unite to raise thousands of scholarships for the 2025 graduating class. For decades, a small town of just 300 have shown remarkable community spirit and support for students' futures.
Lily Pearson, the University of Mary.
Zach Kapinski, Minnesota State University, Mankato.
Every high school senior you're meeting,
Trevor Hansen, Central Lakes College, Staples,
is about to receive a scholarship to help pay for these schools.
Hunter Moore, SMSU.
A gift from Swanville, their hometown.
A lot of adventures together.
Former principal Chris Dunshee and former gas station owner Royal Loven brainstormed the idea in 1987.
We'll put a big billboard outside of town on the highway that says, "Come to Swanville School. We give every student that graduates a scholarship."
The billboard didn't happen, but Swanville got to work on the scholarships slowly. Chili cook-offs, calendars, cheese curds, poinsettias, waffles, bingo, and pull tabs. Swanville has sold everything but its historic water tower to raise money for scholarships.
To me, it's just this community saying, like, go be great, go do something cool and make a difference in the world.
Zach Kapinski, grand total of $5,000.
Wherever you go, know that Swanville is always home.
Swanville's class of 2025 can chalk it up.
Thank you.
To growing up.
Thank you.
In the town that dreamed for them.
And with that, we come to the end of today's edition of World News Tonight. With hopes of seeing you again, I'm Marsha Fernando, and we leave you tonight with the visuals of the opening day of the Glastonbury Music Festival. Also, don't forget to send us your feedback through email at feedback.ad24english@derana.lk or via WhatsApp at 076-805-7933. Anuradha Vikramasinghe will be joining you next with the Nightly Business Report. Thank you for watching and have a great night.